One of the great joys of being an organist is how we can create so many colours on our instrument. The organ is capable of an almost infinite variety of sounds and dynamics. The combination of stops that we choose to achieve those sounds is called registration. In some music, we can also achieve colour and dynamic variety through manipulating swell boxes or by changing registrations during a piece, and we call that organ management. If you're an organ scholar, you will need to be able to choose registrations for yourself. You'll also need to become proficient at managing whichever organ you play. Stylistic awareness is important when choosing stops and registration schemes, and you should listen to organs from different countries and familiarize yourself with different registration traditions in order to help you make informed choices that best suit your instrument. As a teacher, I've found that students sometimes feel quite nervous about registration and organ management, especially when they are faced with preparing and performing a choral accompaniment, which organ scholars must do regularly. If that sounds like you, then this film is designed to help. Richard Pennell, Director of Music at Jesus College, Cambridge, is now going to show you some basics, including how to get to know your instrument, and how to set up your divisional pistons to help you in your accompaniments. How to practice executing a seamless crescendo and diminuendo on an organ with divisional pistons. How to decide on a registration scheme. How often and whether to change stops, and what to look for in the choral part to help you decide. How to register by hand if you don't have access to divisionals. How to figure out places where watching the conductor will be especially important. How to write in and practice your registration scheme. He'll do this by looking at the accompaniment to the Nunc Dimittis from Stanford's Evening Canticles in C.
It can be quite daunting when faced with a choral accompaniment on an unfamiliar instrument. In rehearsals and services, we as accompanists have to be able to react to the whims of the singers, the conductor, and even the organ itself. Today we're going to look at how to manage registration in an accompaniment situation. Many modern organs are equipped with registration aids, and these are often in the form of divisional and general pistons. Here on the organ of Jesus College, we have exactly this system. The 8 general pistons affect the entire organ, whereas each division, swell, grate and pedal, also has 8 pistons to control the stops of that particular division. We can also link together the grate and pedal divisionals so that pedal 1 also selects grate 1, and so on. These can be invaluable when accompanying a choir, and once mastered, enable the player to change sounds quickly and smoothly. It is common practice to set the divisional pistons up in a crescendo, with piston 1 the quietest and piston 8 the strongest. As every instrument is different, it's important to get to know the individual stops and their character. You can then work out how to best combine them to create a smooth crescendo. You might find it useful to ask a friend to listen down in the building, or even to play for you so that you can hear the effect away from the console. Let us now look at Stanford's Nunc Dimittis in C. I'm going to take it as read that you are already comfortable playing the notes of this accompaniment. The next step is to take a look at the choral parts. This is a good time to practice your score reading. We start off in 4-part harmony, comfortably in the middle of each voice part's range. The phrases are all relatively short in length, but many choir directors like to have an extra breath just before the end of bar 13 to make more sense of the words. As the music grows, the voices gradually sing higher in their range, with a unison climax from "And to be the glory." This will need some extra support from the organ. Likewise, in the final phrase before the Gloria, whilst still in unison, the singers are much lower in their ranges, and so it would be appropriate to reduce the weight of the organ sound at this point. In the Gloria itself, the organ begins in dialogue with the choir, as equal partners really. The individual entries at World Without End might require a little less organ before building up again to the end. The main thing to work out in this piece is the build-up beginning at "which thou hast prepared." Stanford gives the organist neat 2-bar phrases, and it makes most sense to add stops either with these phrases or perhaps every 4 bars. I've worked out how best to do it on this organ using the divisional pistons that I set up earlier. You will see that I mark these in the copy thus. Now that I have settled on a useful registration scheme, it's time to put it into practice. I can use the thumb pistons, and there are also toe pistons that duplicate the swell divisionals and the grate and pedal divisionals. But how do I practice this? Pushing a piston is a very similar movement to playing a note. Therefore, we should approach it in much the same way, selecting the best finger or foot to push the piston and practicing the movement under tempo until it feels fluent. The stop mechanism takes a little time to move, so we need to press the piston a little earlier than playing the next note, almost like playing a grace note. This means that the stops are added or subtracted exactly in time. Finally, I use the swell pedal to smooth over the stop changes, closing it to add or subtract stops from the swell, and opening it to add or subtract stops on the grate. Now I'll play the accompaniment for you. One other little trick, which is useful for pieces that end fairly strongly. Notice how I played the final chord in the right hand on the swell. This slightly lightens the organ sound that is in the same range as the voice parts and enables them to more easily sing over a decent amount of organ. Of course, many smaller instruments do not have many or any registration aids. It is still perfectly possible to play simpler accompaniments on these instruments with a combination of minimal stop changing and occasional revoicing of the organ part. our journey with this accompaniment is not yet over. We now have to be ready to play it with a choir and directed by a conductor. Look through the piece and work out where a conductor might wish to use rubato. Stanford himself asks for an accelerando in bars 18 to 25. The simple answer here is to be familiar enough with the notes and your registration scheme to watch the conductor almost all of the time. You should, at the very least, look at least once in every bar. Practice this just as you practice the notes and registration. Get into the habit of looking at the mirror or screen. Finally, do try to enjoy making music in collaboration with other people. The more you do it, the more natural it will become. Very soon you will find that you are able to adapt your registration scheme spontaneously if you need to. You will find that pushing pistons in accompaniments and repertoire becomes second nature, and this will give you a great deal of musical freedom. Like many things, it looks very easy when done well, but this is always the result of lots of hard work. I hope that you enjoy experimenting with some of the ideas that I have shared with you.